Everything after presumably is not a question appropriate for the Parliament, so I'm not responding.
It's not a question appropriate for the Parliament?
Sorry. Everything after presumably is your hypothetical, so I'm not responding to it.
Right. Well, I'll ask the officials then. How was the Prime Minister able to say in the House of Representatives on Wednesday the 3rd of September that those reports were not accurate if he had not been briefed on the matter?
Okay, that's
a very good question.
I understand your discomfort.
No, it's not. I think it's just a sort of a clever way of asking the same question.
Thank you, Senator Wong. It's very kind, but I'd rather
I wasn't actually clever can be both ways,
Yeah.
but I take it positively. I'm fine with that. But you've asked your primary question.
Before we continue, do us a little favour by subscribing to the channel, because over 98% of you watching haven't subscribed. It costs you nothing, not even a penny, to join this channel. Have you subscribed? Thanks so much.
Asked me to confirm what was wrong with the reports. This is a report from a month ago. I don't recall all that was in that. And to give you a clear response, I have taken that on notice. You're now proceeding to ask a set of questions, assuming a set of knowledge and here at this table of all of the details of that 3rd of September report. We've taken the primary question on notice. Now, you can continue to ask questions, but you would not be surprised, Senator Paterson, if we're likely to say something similar.
I don't have the Hansard in front of me from Senate question time that week, but if my memory serves me well, I think similar questions were put to you, Senator Wong, and I think you told the Senate that those reports were not accurate. So how did you know the reports were not accurate?
Senator, these are not my estimates. I'm here representing the Prime Minister.
Right. So you're not prepared to answer that?
No, but no, Senator, please. You know there are... I know you want to make... a thing today. I'm here representing the Prime Minister and this portfolio today. You have plenty of opportunities on Friday. If you wish to come, I'm sure there'll be a big cast of coalition senators there to ask me questions about statements I've made.
Again, I'll have to check whether my memory serves me accurately, but if I'm right, I suspect we were asking you those questions in your capacity representing the Prime Minister.
Correct.
So are you not prepared to answer questions today about statements you have made in the Parliament representing the Prime Minister?
No, I am prepared to answer many questions today. I may not be prepared to give you the answers that you want because...
Any answers will do at this stage.
May I finish?
Sure.
You were very concerned about me interrupting you. But we've come to Senate estimates with many officials, including those behind us. This is an accountability exercise. It's actually associated with the budget. It's not a follow up every single thing that you wish to follow up. It is actually centred around the estimates of an appropriation. Now, I understand, having been on that side of the table for many years, that you will ask political questions, but this is not question time, and I'm not here to respond to every follow-up from question time.
Senator Wong, I have sat with you on this side of the table in Senate estimates for many years.
Weren't you on this side?
No, I've never been on that side of the table.
Okay.
But I have sat with you on this side of the table for many years. In fact, I was in Senator Grogan's chair for a while you were in here. You never felt the need to restrict yourselves to budget matters when you're on this side of the table.
No, and
are you seriously suggesting that we can only ask questions about the budget in this forum?
No, I'm just making the point that it isn't a free-for-all in here. The report, I've just been sent the PM's answer. So this was Ms Lay's question. I refer to reports in The Australian that government officials are helping to bring these individuals who are described as ISIS terrorist brides to Australia PM, these aren't ordinary citizens, etc., etc. What actions has your government taken to guarantee the safety of Australians if these people return? And the Prime Minister said these reports are not accurate.
And so what we're trying to get to the bottom of is what about those reports was not accurate?
And that's what I've taken on notice. But I'm saying that that is the question.
Okay. At other times, the government has said that they have not provided assistance to returning ISIS brides. How does the government define assistance?
Repatriation assistance.
Okay. So does providing an Australian who has applied for citizenship by descent overseas through the Department of Home Affairs constitute assistance in your view?
It's not a question of what my view is.
Well, in the government's view, does that constitute assistance?
That is a matter for Home Affairs.
No, it's not. The Prime Minister has said the government did not provide
finish?
assistance. Yeah.
I hadn't answered. If you want to ask me a question, let me answer. You can follow up.
How about we both do a deal with each other? I won't interrupt you if you don't interrupt me.
That is a matter for Home Affairs. They administer the Citizenship Act. That is what you're asking about. It's not a matter for me personally. It's not a matter for the Prime Minister personally. It is a matter for the Department of Home Affairs, which is charged with administering that legislation, or the Minister is actually, and doing so in accordance with the obligations on officials, both expressed and implied under that legislation.
Except the Prime Minister has said the government did not provide assistance. And it is well established in this forum that we can ask questions about statements made by the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister has said the government did not provide assistance. Does the Prime Minister consider providing citizenship by descent to be assistance?
The government the government has been clear that we are not providing assistance to repatriate, and there is no plan to repatriate these individuals. Public servants, officials, acting in accordance with their obligations, I think is a separate matter.
Okay. So does the Prime Minister or the government consider providing a passport to someone overseas to constitute assistance?
I'm sorry?
Does the government consider providing a passport to someone overseas to be assistance?
Again, that's a matter for DFAT.
No, I'm asking you about the Prime Minister and the government's view. He's made statements on the public record that the government has not provided assistance. I'm trying to determine what he believes assistance constitutes, and does that include providing a passport?
It is a matter for DFAT to explain to you the obligations that we have in that portfolio, which you can do on Friday. But can I talk about it this way? There have been previous occasions where assistance was provided to repatriate Australian women and children from Syrian IDP camps. And I think they have been made public. They involved extensive planning, assistance from a number of Australian agencies, international partners, flights, etc. We are not providing such assistance.
That is different to what the Prime Minister has said when he's been asked about this question.
Well, I'm assisting further.
Senator Wong, I think it's important that you've now clarified what the Prime Minister has said. Are you saying now that when the Prime Minister said the government has not provided assistance, what he meant was the government is not providing repatriation?
Penny Wong walked into Senate estimates this week thinking it would be a manageable session. She walked out having confirmed piece by piece, almost against her will, that the Albanese government has been helping ISIS-affiliated women obtain the documents they need to return to Australia, while simultaneously telling the Australian public it has provided no assistance whatsoever. It did not happen in one dramatic moment. It happened slowly, methodically, through a line of questioning from Senator James Paterson that Wong herself described as clever. She meant it as a mild insult. And it turned out to be a more accurate description than she intended. Here is how it unfolded. The story begins on the 2nd of September, a Tuesday evening, when journalist Liam Mendes published a report in The Australian revealing that ISIS-affiliated women, Australian citizens who had travelled to Syria to join the Islamic State, were potentially being assisted to return to Australia. The following day, Wednesday, the 3rd of September, Prime Minister Albanese was asked about it in question time in the House of Representatives. His answer was direct. He said those reports were not accurate, not nuanced, not partially accurate, not accurate. Paterson arrived at Senate estimates armed with that quote and a very simple question. What about those reports was not accurate? Wong said she would take it on notice. She hadn't. And as she explained, gone back to look at precisely what was in those reports from a month ago. Paterson then asked the logical follow-up. If the Prime Minister was able to stand up in the House of Representatives on the 3rd of September and declare those reports inaccurate, he must have been briefed on the matter before he said that. Is that a reasonable assumption? Wong cut him off before he finished the sentence. She said everything after, presumably, was a hypothetical, and she was not going to respond to it. Paterson smiled and turned to the officials seated behind Wong. He rephrased. How, he asked, was the Prime Minister able to say in the House of Representatives that those reports were not accurate if he had not been briefed on the matter? There was a pause. One of the officials said, and quietly, "That's a very good question." Wong jumped in immediately. She said it was a clever way of asking the same question. Paterson thanked her. She clarified that clever can go both ways. He said he took it positively. The room laughed. But underneath the politeness, something significant had just happened. The government's most senior Senate representative had been presented with a simple factual question: how did the Prime Minister know the reports were wrong? And had no answer to give. She took it on notice. A question about what the Prime Minister knew and when about the possible return of ISIS-affiliated women to Australia, and the Foreign Minister had to take it on notice. Paterson shifted tack. He noted that at various points the government had said it had not provided assistance to returning ISIS brides. He asked Wong to define what the government means by assistance. She said repatriation assistance. He asked, does providing an Australian citizen with citizenship by descent through the Department of Home Affairs constitute assistance in the government's view? She said that was a matter for Home Affairs. He pressed. The Prime Minister had made a public statement that the government did not provide assistance. It is well established in Senate estimates that senators can ask questions about statements the Prime Minister has made. So does the Prime Minister consider granting citizenship by descent to be assistance? Wong said the government had been clear it was not providing assistance to repatriate these individuals and that public servants acting in accordance with their legal obligations was a separate matter entirely. And Paterson followed immediately. Does providing a passport to someone overseas constitute assistance? Wong said that was a matter for the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. Paterson pushed back. He was not asking about departmental procedures. He was asking about the Prime Minister's own public statement that the government had not provided assistance. He wanted to know whether, in the Prime Minister's view, handing someone a passport counted as assistance. Wong repeated that officials acting within their legal obligations is what that is. It is officials doing what they are required to do. Paterson put it simply. Without a passport, without citizenship by descent, you cannot enter Australia. You need those documents to get in. The government provides those documents. Is that not assistance? Wong said they had a different view on that. Paterson asked her to articulate it. She referred to her previous answer. This is the moment the session turned. Because what Wong had just done in trying to defend the Prime Minister's blanket statement that no assistance had been provided was draw a line between formal repatriation assistance, the organised, government-coordinated kind involving planes and international partners, and the quieter administrative process of issuing passports and processing citizenship applications. She was arguing these are fundamentally different things, that the latter is just officials following the law, not assistance. Paterson acknowledged the distinction. And then he asked the question that unravelled everything. He noted that in 2022, the Albanese government had publicly and actively repatriated a cohort of Australian women and children from Syrian IDP camps. That was acknowledged, organised, deliberate government assistance. Wong confirmed it. He then noted that the government was apparently not doing that this time. He asked, why not? When did that policy change? What was the decision? And why was it made? Wong said the government makes decisions in the national interest. He asked when. She said the government makes decisions in the national interest. He asked why. She said that is the decision the government made. He asked again why. She eventually offered that there are diplomatic considerations, legal considerations, welfare considerations and security considerations that the government weighs when determining whether to repatriate individuals from Syria. Oh, that was the most substantive answer she gave on the policy question. But it raised an immediate problem. Because if the government has carefully weighed diplomatic, legal, welfare and security factors in deciding not to formally repatriate these women this time, while simultaneously processing their passport and citizenship applications through the normal administrative channels, then the Prime Minister's statement that the reports were not accurate becomes harder to explain, not easier. The report said government officials were helping to bring ISIS-affiliated women back to Australia. The government's own foreign minister confirmed this week that citizenship by descent applications and passport processing are occurring. She confirmed there is no formal repatriation programme. She could not confirm what the Prime Minister meant when he said the reports were inaccurate because she hadn't checked what the reports actually said. Outside the estimates room, the clip moved fast. By Thursday morning, it was running across political social media with the kind of attention that opposition research teams spend months trying to generate. Security analysts and counter-terrorism commentators who had been following the ISIS bride question since the original Mendes report were noting that Wong had inadvertently or not confirmed the central factual premise of what the Prime Minister had called inaccurate. Defence and security community forums were asking pointed questions. Former Australian Federal Police officers were weighing in on social media and noting that the distinction Wong drew between repatriation assistance and routine document processing may be legally coherent but is politically and practically difficult to defend to the Australian public. A passport is a passport. Citizenship papers are citizenship papers. The person who holds them can board a plane and land in Sydney. In suburban Melbourne and Western Sydney, communities that have been directly affected by the long shadow of homegrown terrorism and the pain of watching Australians travel to join ISIS, the reaction was not abstract. Real Australians in those communities have buried people, attended funerals and sat through coronial inquests connected to attacks carried out or inspired by the Islamic State. For those communities, the question of who is coming back and what the government knew is not a Senate estimates technicality. It is personal. The contrast between the government's language and its actions was not lost on them. What makes this story stick is not just the policy question, it is the character of the exchange itself. Wong is one of the most experienced parliamentary operators Australia has produced. She has sat on both sides of the Senate estimates table. She knows how these sessions work better than almost anyone in the building. She came into this session knowing Paterson would pursue the ISIS bride question. She had the Prime Minister's Hansard answer in front of her. It was sent to her mid-session and she read it out herself. And still, by the end of the session, she had confirmed she does not know what the Prime Minister considered inaccurate in those original reports. She had confirmed that the government's definition of no assistance excludes the processing of citizenship and passport applications. She had confirmed there was a different approach in 2022 involving active repatriation and that the current approach is different, but she could not say clearly when that decision was made, who made it, or what drove it beyond the phrase national interest. That is a lot of not knowing from a minister representing a Prime Minister who stood up in Parliament and said the reports were not accurate. Paterson described his questioning as a way of getting clarity. Wong called it clever. Both descriptions are accurate. The clarity he got was this: the government does not have a clean answer to how the Prime Minister knew what he knew when he said what he said. And until that answer arrives, on notice, presumably at some point, the gap between what Albanese said and what is actually happening sits open for everyone to see. So here is the question for every Australian watching. If the Prime Minister can declare reports inaccurate in Parliament without being able to explain what was inaccurate about them, and his most senior Senate minister cannot define what no assistance means after being asked a dozen different ways, who is actually across what is happening with ISIS-affiliated Australians seeking to return home? And do you feel confident in the answer? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If this story deserves more attention than it's getting in the mainstream press, share it, send it to someone who should be asking these questions, and subscribe if you want political coverage that follows the thread all the way to the end, no matter where it leads.